it's very smart students that know to ask the question that in slightly 5 seconds before I was going to give you the answer. So we're tapping into something different there. So hands up above your head, not anybody else's head. When I'm going to ask the questions, I'm just amusing myself here. Some call that masturbating when amusing yourself. But anyway, when I asked you to move your head to the left and eyes to the right, the first time when you're just sitting, hands up, who felt that was difficult? When I gave you a task of actually looking at your thumbnail and focusing on it, it was all of a sudden easy, but it's the same movement, right? So who had that difference? It was hard without the thumbnail and then easy with the thumbnail. Yeah. So for most people, it should be. It's the same movement. You think that's nuts. But it's not nuts because you've learned to do something. Narian.
Fast, like let's say the up and down.
Yeah.
Like, and eyes open. It was okay, and it was working pretty efficiently. And this is before the focus came in. But I found it really humorous when it came into the middle where the eyes were in line, because I was like jumping in and out of like 2 tasks or whatever. And that brief line of intermission, that's when I would spaz out. And you were saying like, find out where you kind of like get dizzy or whatever. Yeah. And I found my stable position really dizzy or like disorientating in that movement.
Yeah. And it's whether, so the people that I work with, at that point when they get disoriented, not all of them, but a lot of them get anxious. And so half the time what I'm dealing with is their anxiety, not their vestibular system. But yeah, so that's why what we're exploring here in a very benign, safe way is a position that you could tip into anxiety, but you're learning to just sit with that confusion, that point where you're going, I'm a bit disoriented, and going, this is just interesting. How do I find orientation, as opposed to spin out into anxiety? Yeah. Kevin, did you have something? I'm coming back to you,
I was just going to say that,
Anna.
I was going to say just about perspective too, as in focusing on a point further away versus
close. That makes a difference. Yep. Focal length does make a difference. So for those of you who felt a difference, what you tapped into with this thing is your vestibular system and your eyes. You yoked them together. Yoked as in they started working together better. And it's called a reflex, but it's actually not. You learn to do it. That's why language is so imprecise in these things. The vestibular ocular reflex. Vestibular meaning we've got these little spirit levels in our heads, right? And as we turn in any direction, the spirit levels cover all 3 planes of action. Then they fire off and they tell us how quickly and in what direction our head is turning. So when they detect that I'm turning a little bit this way, but I want to look at the apple on Zoran's Mac machine, it sends a signal to my eyes saying, okay, head is turning 2 degrees per second to the left, like in this plane. Eyes turn 2 degrees per second to the right, exactly the opposite. And we've learned to do this. So that's when I've got some in response to a cue in the environment, so the Mac. So I want to keep that apple stable. So I can actually go really fast. Now, if you said to me, take your eyes to the left and your head to the right, without that, I mean, I can do it because I've been doing it for a long time, but it's not as clear, right? Because I've learned a function, and the function is to create this illusion that the world is still when it's actually bouncing around on my eyeballs. And that's why we can walk and keep an image, on the supermarket shelf stable, because we fix our eyes on it, and we have our vestibular system that's monitoring where our head is in space, the movement of our head, sending that to the eyes, saying counterpoise that, counteract that, exactly. And it's so quick. You have the illusion that that thing is still. And then people can lose it. So all of you lose it at some speed. You feel that where the image you no longer have the illusion that it's still, it starts jumping around. That's when you haven't trained yourself to go that fast. But there is a point when you can't go any faster. But everybody's speed, as I'm looking around the room, is quite different. So context really matters, doesn't it? About what sort of skill level you can tap into. And you do have the VOR, this vestibular ocular reflex, going up and down as well, but we don't use it as much. Right? Try that with your thumbnail, going up and down. So you're all going relatively slowly when your eyes and your head were going in opposite movements to each other. And now all of you are going much faster because you're now tapping into this different pathway, this different set of connections. You're no longer, it's not volitional anymore. It's not voluntary. You've gone into something that's learned and habitual, which is what a reflex in this, the VOR is. It's a habit, an association habit, let's say. So now you can actually go much faster than you thought you could, right? And it's the same movement, same combination of movements, but you've just tapped into a different pathway. That's just for interest, just because it's trainable. So that's, you know, a lot of my practice, I train people to do, you know, who have lost that facility because of motion problems, vestibular problems, where their vestibular system's telling them porkies. So motion sickness. So motion sickness is something else. Again, I'm getting a bit of feedback all of a sudden for some reason. I don't know why. Motion sickness, there's a lot of different reasons why the nausea comes with the head and eye movements. So the interaction between the vestibular system and the eye movements, why it creates nausea, we don't know. So we know we get nauseous if we eat something yucky, because that's our body saying this is yucky and we need to get rid of it. Otherwise we'll get sick, as you know. So we understand that kind of nausea. Why nausea gets triggered with this motion when we're overloaded sensorially. There's a mismatch between the movement that we're doing and the visual input. So that, you know, the vestibular input and the visual input. We can understand why it makes us feel dizzy, because dizziness is simply a movement illusion. You have the illusion that you're moving and you're not. You know, when we say your head's spinning. But why nausea, we don't know. Yes?
That could be association because you try and get into your body and try and find the ground.
Yeah, that's a response to the nausea. Yeah. That's a probably learned response. So my clients, my smart clients, do that when they feel dizzy and or nauseous. They'll ground themselves, which is a really smart thing to do, because it's a sense that you can rely on. Maybe I'll find the ground. There's this dear old lady I worked with in the western suburbs once, and she was so smart. She said, when I get my dizziness, I go to the kitchen and I sit on my wooden chair and I take my shoes off and I put my feet like this and I sit in front of the fridge and I stare at this postcard. And that's so smart, because her vestibular system is misfiring and giving her an illusion of movement. And what she's doing is exactly what you're saying. She's substituting another sense. She's feeling the ground under her feet. She's feeling a wooden chair under her bottom, very reliable. And then she's telling her eyeballs, no, things aren't jumping. Look at that postcard. You know, she must be a Vulcan. She's so logical. You know, I know that apple is not going to jump around. I'm going to stare at it. So I've got my vision saying I'm still. I've got my somatosensation saying I'm still. So vestibular system, if you tell me I'm moving, you're just full of shit. Like when you're really drunk, when you've got the bed spins, what do? Well, you hang on. Yeah. But yeah, that's exactly what does alcohol do? It upsets your vestibular system. That's what the bed spins are, movement illusion. Yes.
During our exercise,
yes,
I had dizziness very quickly.
Yes, and then it went.
I imagined that my eyes just the balls with the water or liquid, and basically my eyes inside the liquid, and they are not moving. Only my head is moving. Yeah, and immediately dizziness disappeared.
Great.
And it doesn't matter which directions, because always my eyes were just stable. Look at one direction, but my head did the job.
Great. Yep. So you really divorced the two. That's a very smart system. You find a way to deal with the sensory issue.
Just imagine.
You imagine. It's great. Yeah, imagination's great. Nathan's one more.
Lachlan.
Sorry, Lachlan.
That's right.
Who's the hell's Nathan? You know, because Nathan and Lachlan, they've got similar letters in them. I don't know any Nathans. Lachlan. Sorry. What do I say, Narayan? Narayan. You can see how visual I am. You know, like...
We don't have our language on.
No, it's your fault. Sorry, Narayan.
With the work of Norman George and that woman they talked about who lost her vestibular apparatus, basically.
Yeah.
And they used a kind of weird helmet contraption that had levels in it and would give us sensory feedback to her tongue.
Yeah.
And she'd wear that for like half an hour and then she could walk the rest of the day fine.
Yeah. Substitution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Substituting that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was learning to find that equilibrium somewhere else.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a lot of the classic neuroplasticity experiments are basically substituting the interpretation of one sense for another. Yeah. I don't want to get too much into neuroplasticity though, because that's later. It's in the curriculum later. Don't upset me. Sylvia, upset me. Go ahead.
When you talk get lost, it occurs me very often when I am hearing something and I don't understand what they are saying.
Yes.
and I lost because I am not understanding what are they saying.
Yes.
And it creates a little anxious.
Yes.
Also, when we were doing this kind of exercises and I get lost and stop, but I find my security stopping, going down, going back with the directions you give, or trying to keep the conversation, okay, where we begin.
Yes.
To get back the idea or the whole idea to be less lost.
Yes.
Another thing I want to say about this kind of exercise, that I feel awake, like, oh, I awake. And I'm walking by the streets and I see, there are some people are awake, there are some people that are not awake. And like a kind of science fiction movie.
Yes.
Some awake and there are some, they are not, they are like these, or they are just going like horses with the
blinkers.
And
Their orientation is very small and very, I think what that's really interesting. You can get lost in the language, and it's the same kind of confusion. And you have a somatic set of strategies when language gets confusing. It's really that's really clear, isn't it? It's a really clear strategy that Sylvia uses. That she stops. This is what we do in ATM. You stop. You review. You orient yourself. Where was I? And where was I spatially? Where were we in language-wise? So they're the same. Language and space, same. And it's not getting anxious. It's that I could go into anxiety. And what does that do? Does that help you reorient? Actually, no, it doesn't. So anxiety is not a useful strategy. So you recognize I'm going into the anxious, I'm feeling confused and lost, go into anxiety, not a useful strategy to reorient. Finding other strategies in that instance, grounding yourself, slowing, stopping, reviewing. Where am I? Where was I? So reviewing into the past, then going back into the future, whatever. You start developing these sets of strategies, and that's really beautifully articulated in any situation. Is that clear? Ish? Okay. So the vestibular system, the visual system, they are systems that help us orient. The vestibular system also orients us with respect to gravity because it has gravity referenced receptors in it. Yeah. So that's, these are some of the senses that we use to orient with. So vision, now we haven't stated it explicitly, but we will be in this series of ATMs coming up. You will orient to the horizon. That's what the visual system does. It creates a horizontal reference, or in Kwan's language, transverse, horizontal reference. So if you lie on your tummy, if you do it, lie on your tummy. And remember this movement, Zoran and I both taught the extensor lesson, and you lifted your head. And what do your eyes do? You lift your head symmetrically, and your eyes are relatively oriented to the horizon. The world makes more sense if our eyes are relatively horizontal. So tip your head a little bit. You know, like one ear goes closer to the shoulder. Now, for some of you, you'll tip your head in the direction where actually you have your head slightly tilted. So you orient to a slightly maladjusted horizon. Let's say maladjusted. Tip your head the other way. So for a baby, when they first lift their head like this and they start orienting their eyes to the horizon, it's because from a neurological point of view, it's easier to make sense of the world if we create a horizontal reference. The brain doesn't have to process so hard. And some of you might actually be able to sense that. If you tip your head, the world is just a slightly more difficult. If you have to read something or you have to listen, it's just a little bit more difficult if you're not oriented to the horizon. Roll up to sitting and orient, try and listen to my voice with your head tipped one way. Now, it's not a fair experiment because your vestibular system's also asymmetrical now. So you're working hard from a vestibular and a visual point of view. So if I kept on talking and you're going, oh, please don't keep on talking. Actually, it could be harder for you to process what I'm saying just because the world is not as easy to discern and then tip the other way. Apart from the fact that it's harder to stay like that. Anyone get that sense? It's just, world is not, just no. Could be you're used to, you know, and we all do have a little predilection one way or the other. I've put hearing up there as something that we orient to. If I turn this off, you know, my voice is only coming from one direction. Stand up. Shut your eyes. Keep your eyes shut and orient to me. How did you do that? You want to put your back. So you turn around. Most of you would have started to be used. You turn until my voice came to both of you. You use two ears. By all, two ears to have. Yeah, shut your eyes. Did you? Oh, you had my foot there.
No, I don't use it.
Oh. I didn't know I did. You had my feet. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
All right, everybody turn their eyes off. You want me to answer that question? Yes, you can ask me something. That's what I'm not so sure about. Yes, you can ask me.
Voice is different. I respect on my face. I will be honest.
You want the voice to hear. You want to hear it very not everybody does this strategy. One of the strategies is you locate me by turning the head until my voice reaches both ears equally, and that means you're not oriented. But if you do this, my voice actually hits this ear before it hits this ear. It's still oriented, but you still use that to calculate where I am. So it makes more sense.
We all know exactly what it is.
Yeah. And you don't have to orient to it because you're smart and you know that it's hitting your right ear slightly earlier than the left. You can turn your head. So if I'm completely like this, I know that it's there. I turn it here and it's putting this one only slightly more because I turn it like this, putting the same. That's how I do it. Yeah, shut your eyes. Yeah. You know, shut your eyes. There's one. Feel that? Feel what you think. Feel it as in feel it in the ear. I'm so quiet. You were smiling. But we have other things. It was like stop when I walked upstairs in my house. It was like a top room, something to do, and my voice changed. I walked and I was upstairs. And all of a sudden my voice changes quality and I know I'm in space. So when students about excellence, we do that stuff. It's our voice. And we forget about that. I think it's not that orientation. Your eyeballs are really big. It's got big eyeballs. I don't know. All right.